Welcome to the Tech Sales Show, dedicated to making you a better seller. Recorded 4,827 miles across the Atlantic Ocean with Bobby Doss from Houston, Texas, a father, husband, golfer, pilot, and tech seller. And Brian Evans, an expat in London, England, family man, 2X Ironman, and an ERP salesman. Both sharing tried and true sales strategies and providing free tools to make each week and campaign easier for you. They also answer your questions weekly. Now, here is Bobby and Brian.
Hey, Bobby.
What's up, Brian?
Today we have the last and final episode of Series 5. This has been all about the Challenger Sell. This is my favorite sales book for as far back as these things go. This is something we've talked about really since we've been doing the start of this podcast, Bobby. It's a great book.
No doubt. I love it as well, and one that I have gone back to many times.
Yeah, so we decided to add in the Challenger Sales Manager. It's a good, because the audience is growing, which has been fun. We have a number of first-line managers that are listening to the show. We have a number of reps that aspire to be sales managers. So this was kind of by request. We decided to add this episode 5 of the Challenger series, Series 5. So this is all going to be about the interaction of a Challenger sales manager. What do they do different? How do they interact with their teams? But if you've missed any part of this series, it's probably worth going back. What we covered in the first couple episodes was all about the Challenger approach. So we talked about the different sales personas. We talked about, Bobby, your instinct is to be more of the lone wolf. Mine is to be more of the problem solver. But we talked about how you can use those best tendencies to turn into more of a challenger approach. So while you have those tendencies, and those are great tendencies, the challenger approach is the most successful of all those. We talked about spin selling. We talked about how that kind of compared and contrast that model to spin selling and kind of the old school questions about diving deep in early discovery and how that contrasts to the Challenger Sell and why the Challenger Sell is a bit more effective. Last week we talked about the 6 steps for the Challenger Sell way, which is all about the warmer, the reframe, rational drowning, emotional impact, the new way, what your solution is. We gave examples of our workplaces and how we do this week to week. And then finally, we kind of wrapped it all up, Bobby, with both tailoring for resonance and taking control of the process. This is where we talked about whether you got 6 customers or 80 prospective customers, how do you scale this to work for your customer base? We talked about building a list of business outcomes, and trying to use themes that exist across your 80 customers or 6 customers with existing stories you already have in your business. So it's a lot, but that's a bit of what we've covered in this past series. And like I said, it's been a lot of fun.
It has been, and I think we weren't going to originally include this Challenger Sales Manager component, but thought it was worth the time and effort for those out there that have been asking us manager questions, next step questions in their career, etc. So we hope that this lands well and that you finish the book and read those last couple chapters as well.
Indeed. So the Challenger Sell team, Matt Dixon kind of led this, conducted a study on sales management to determine what makes an effective sales manager. They came out with two broad characteristics. 73% of their time was the sales management ability. So this is their ability, the sales manager's ability to sell, coach, own action items for effectiveness in the deal and running successful transactions. And the last 27% was comprised of management fundamentals. These are things that you'd expect from a cultural standpoint: integrity, reliability, being able to have a two-way conversation with a self-aware manager. Those were the 2 big characteristics they drew out of this study.
And don't we all know someone who was the best sales rep on the team and ultimately got promoted to a sales manager role and really didn't encompass either one of these 2 big buckets? Great sellers, no question. Knew how to control the customer, maybe knew how to control the deal, but they were a classic lone wolf or a relationship builder, and they didn't have any people management skills. And I've seen in my current company and others where you just don't get the fortitude and the training to become a people manager. And that really is a problem if you can't coach. It does say, the first bullet did say selling, but I think that's a smaller component of that bullet than the coaching component and the owning component. You got to really be able to put yourself in your rep's shoes and help them get better, not just get that one deal off the street.
Yeah, and we talked about this actually right before we started recording here, that we're going to do a listener's choice. This is a listener's choice that I requested, actually. It's about the stretch activities. Bobby, you kind of led me to this early on in my career, the stretch activities that would help you be successful in your career. And if you are that top achieving sales rep that's just killing it for your team year after year, and you have big aspirations to become a manager, man, there are always questions about, well, they're a great rep, but would they ever be a great manager? So in an upcoming listener's choice that we're going to do here towards the end of the year, it's going to be about what kind of stretch activities can you do to prove that you can do the job before you do the job. Because like you said, there's almost a bit of a stigma of the account manager that's really successful going on to manage his or her own team. It's a pretty big stigma. So we'll record that. We'll share it out for the team. But yeah, this is a big concern for leadership whenever you have an account executive that's making this transition. So let's jump into it. We talked about the most important skill that any sales manager can possess is the skill of being innovative, finding creative ways to help their reps move deals forward. If you bring nothing else to the table, like you said, Bobby, even if you're not a seller, if you're somebody that can help bring an innovative approach to a stalled deal or a deal you can't get across the line or a challenging sales process, somebody that brings innovation to the table is going to help you move that deal forward.
Yeah, and I call it creative as well. And sometimes I know people, sales leaders, who have been the deal orchestrator. And what they don't do well is teach their team how to become the orchestrator and the creator or the innovator of those deals. So we'll call it average sales rep goes into a corner office where the sales manager sits or works on a daily basis and says, hey, I'm stuck. My deal's stuck here. Maybe it's price. Maybe it's competition. Whatever the things are that's holding that deal back. And that sales manager in 5 minutes or less tells them all the steps they need to do to go get that deal and move forward. They do 3 or 4 of those things. They close the deal. But they can't do it themselves. That goes back to the coaching component of the challenger sales manager model, that you've got to be able to teach them how to do it so that you're not the one doing it, or the manager's not the one doing it for them. That's going to set you apart and make you very different. And to the listener's choice that we will record, we'll try and give you some of those stretch projects that give you the ability to interact that way, have that opportunity to do some of that coaching before you become the sales manager. Because quite frankly, I've seen people too that just don't like doing that, and they're not good at it. So they become a sales manager, and they find themselves doing something almost every day that's no fun, not rewarding, and probably not making as much money. So we'll give you some options there as well.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a surprise for me, maybe getting into my first sales management job, is that you're focused on sales process more. So you're focused on sales process and Salesforce or whatever CRM tool it is you're using. That becomes your focus 80% of your day. So if you're a guy or gal that was just nails in front of the customer, and that was like, man, you could take or leave filling out CRM. You could take or leave following the specific sales process that the company, kind of quote unquote required you to do. But man, you were nails in front of a customer, and you can always figure out a way to unstick a deal. But you hated kind of the tools part of it. It could be a challenging role for you, because there is a fair amount of sitting down with account executives, talking through their deals, talking through where things are stalled, how to advance it to the next step, overcoming their size and disinterest in actually doing some of the hard work required to unstick a deal.
No doubt. So if innovative and creative is the number one skill set that the sales manager has to have, the second most important skill set has to be the coaching capabilities, right? Being able to coach their reps.
Indeed. And so it breaks down the coaching piece into 3 different sections: investigate, create, and share. So a sales manager that investigates, they identify obstacles in the way of the sale, they gather feedback in terms of what is and isn't working, and then they identify how to resolve a customer pain. That's all of what we've been talking about. Again, this highlights the importance of having a good sales process. If you didn't listen to that series, it's a good one to listen to. But find a sales process, whether it's the company you work for, their own defined sales process, or come up with your own sales process. But if you can't approach every opportunity in a similar fashion and understand where things break down and where things slide through, you're never going to know where to make adjustments in that process. I think it's the most crucial learning I have from following a sales process.
I also think it's so important that you understand that both in your wins and your losses, right? So you need to do win reviews and loss reviews with your team and your manager. So if you're a sales rep today, you lose a deal, you can't wait for your manager to ask you to have this meeting. You've got to be the one driving the meeting. You've got to be the one providing the feedback that says, did we really have access to power, or were we just really continuing to believe this middle manager saying that he could sign $1 million deal for us? And then ultimately it had to go to the board, and the board turned it down. It did meet some specific criteria, so we screwed up. If that's the case, then the process would have worked. You as a team, or you as a sales rep, maybe got a little bit lazy or blinded by some cognitive bias that you didn't necessarily think was impacting your decisions. But at the same time, you have to drive that loss review and figure out why the deal didn't work out, why you didn't get the win, and then help your leadership team maybe tweak the process or help you find ways to where that doesn't break down next time.
Definitely, and I love the foreshadowing of cognitive bias. We'll get into that upcoming. Number 2, create. They innovate around new ways to position an offer, identify the ideal business outcomes, and work with reps and customers to define and explore new sales solutions. The only way, experience is really the only way to get this, I in my mind, and it takes being intentional to collect these things too. I use Trello. I know we're going to get into in the future a series all about sales productivity. One of the productivity tools I use is called Trello, and it's a bit cumbersome. It's a bit of a heavy app, but it works across all platforms, and I've got it on my MacBook, and I've got it on my iPad, and got it on my iPhone. The reason I mention all that is that there are, in the heat of a deal, when you're trying to come up with something innovative, creative, to unstick something, you can forget what helped you in a deal 3 years ago. So what I've begun doing over the past 2 years is being very intentional about this list of ideas, whether that's creative responses around payment terms, legal gives, how we can get an extended teammate involved that we didn't really think of the first time. You can't just all of a sudden there are some people that probably have a steel trap for a mind that can come up with these on the fly, but it's about being very intentional. What's worked in the past? How can you get creative to help get a deal unstuck and moving forward?
And while the manager might often see him or herself as that person that will help get that deal unstuck, or be the I like it when someone says, just use my title and I'll help you. I don't think customers really care about titles, but I have learned probably more over the last 3 years than not. I hate to admit it some, but it has benefited me very well to get people to win with me and to get people to lose with me. So it's been a tip or a trick that I've started using a lot at Dell, to have a VP get involved in my deals, both the ones that I know are going to happen. They like to know that they helped me close that deal, and then get them involved in the ones that are a little risky. As scary as that might sound to an up-and-coming rep, you're not going to win every one of them for the rest of your life. And if that person's involved and engaged and they had a chance to help you and then you lost, I have a feeling the backlash or the pain that comes from losing will not be near as bad, because you didn't lose alone. But when you lose alone, you didn't get them involved, I'm sure it's going to be painful.
Yeah, that needs to be maybe not a series, but an episode all on its own about executive alignment, executive engagement. Because you're right, the downside of disengagement can be really bad. The upside of a very positive engagement, outside of just winning the deal, which is obviously a positive outcome, can be many other things. If you have an executive that engaged with you on a deal that you ran really, really well and they had a contribution to, it will only do positive things for your career. I can think of countless people that have had stock RSUs that were higher than normal because of their direct engagement of leadership team. That leadership team, when it came time to allocate bonuses or allocate stocks, it was the fact that they engaged the right executives at the right time, did the right things, and they those things came back up when it came time for bonus allocation. It's a big deal. All right, number 3 is share. These managers also share tactics and best practices. They develop and sustain cross-functional relationships with others in the organization. They filter news, information from elsewhere in the organization to their sales team. Bobby, you talked about this kind of early on in your career. It wasn't always your default to share things that you would create. But man, if you're going to be a top performer these days, as you know firsthand, it's maybe one of the most important characteristics to have.
No doubt. And the rep level is important, and we'll talk to that probably in just a minute. But this is specific to the manager. So the way you run your team, the way you run your QBRs. If you create a QBR, a quarterly briefing deck that you like and the team likes, share that with all the other managers. Don't just share it with your boss and hope that he disseminates or she disseminates that information. You share it. You be the leader in role that does those things to help cross-functional relationships in your organization. Those people, I've seen it where people have taken my ideas and rolled them up as their own. That 1 in 20 might work and get away with it. And, good for them if that happens. But at the end of the day, if you're doing it unselfishly, the business will recognize it. The managers that see you do it will talk about you to other managers, and all those good things Brian just talked about, from bonuses, etc., will continue to come your way beyond what that one person that borrowed an idea and called it their own will get. And so think about it. And I would also think that sharing the things that aren't working are probably just as valuable to your peers, especially if there's more than one new manager on the team, right? Hey, this weekly meeting, I've been doing X and Y, running the agenda this way. It's not working. You might be surprised of the nuggets you get back by trying to share some things that would set someone else back.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this definitely warrants its own episode altogether. So we'll develop that and roll it out this year. The framework that the Challenger Sell talks about is called the PAWS framework. It's a little silly, but I think it highlights 5 important framework ideas to help a sales manager coach the teams effectively. PAWS basically stands for preparation, that's the P, affirm, understand, specify, and embed the new behavior, basically. And to kind of lead off with it, preparation is for the coaching conversations. Managers need to prepare for the coaching conversation. That's what you'd expect. Although I think, I don't know, I'll take maybe a different approach on this. There are so many times to where we've maybe sat on a call to unstick a deal, and let's say we book a half-hour call or even a 1-hour call, and the first 15 to 30 minutes of that call are the basics of the deal. Who are they? What industry are they in? What's their recent performance? Who are the power players? What are their earnings like? What's their revenue like? What are their business challenges? What systems are they running? Those are critically important details, but they are details that get in the way of a fruitful conversation. So if you've listened to us for a while, if you've listened to the show for a while, we talked about Prospect 360. Whether you do that through us, whether you do that on your own, it's critical to preemptively share this with the leader in the team that's going to be engaging in this coaching. It's critical to get this out to that team ahead of time. Don't waste 5 minutes on setting up. Expect everyone to come into that meeting with fully educated, ready to go to have a fruitful conversation. Otherwise, you're going to get wrapped around stupid details and burn time.
Agreed. I think to just rewind slightly where you talked about this being a little cheesy or corny, no disagreement there. Although, if you don't have something, at least start here, right? Like, my manager is a brand new manager, just got a brand new manager on Friday. The announcement came. I could be wrong, and forgive me if I am, but I think they have zero management experience in their past and are being thrown into one of the largest enterprise sales teams in North America to lead a lot of talented salespeople that may have known what he liked as a person, but maybe not everyone else is going to like it. Needs some sort of framework as a new manager to guide him through that process. And this is one that is no doubt one that he probably hasn't heard of and would stand to gain from by using it. I see the preparation similarly, but more on the one-on-one conversations, right? If I'm going to prepare or if I'm going to have my one-on-ones, how often are those shotgun events that are just top of mind deals or end of quarter deals and don't do really any good for the rep? I tell people all the time, if you don't manage your own one-on-one with your boss, that's your fault, because I don't think they take time to do it. Good bosses do, though. Good bosses prepare. They keep notes from meeting to meeting. They follow up and close action items, and they keep track of what we're working on, and they use them truly as coaching conversations, not deal progression conversations. There should be a forecast call, and then there should be your employee one-on-one. And hopefully your manager and the managers and to-be managers listening take heed and prepare for those conversations, much like you wish maybe your worst manager would have done when you had them.
It's great advice. I think, you're exactly right. I think the great reps don't let manager one-on-ones come to them. They're the ones that are owning the agenda, even for great sales managers. Even when there's a great sales manager in place, they come prepared with their OneNote or their Evernote document with what was discussed last time, what were the action items, what's going to be discussed next, whether that's deal related or career related. They're owning those conversations. That's critical. The second part of this is affirm the relationship, create a safe situation for coaching to occur. What I've done on this traditionally, and I do this as an account exec, as a overlay, as a manager, is I say, give me on a scale of 1 to 10, what level feedback you want from me. And I do it, it's very intentional, because very, very few times will someone say, I only want it at a 6 or a 3. Everyone always wants all the feedback, right? They think they want all the feedback. Now, it's how you deliver it is really, really important. But there are some tough conversations that need to be had, and that it's not tough conversations because somebody's doing something really bad. It's because it may be a nuance that no one is telling them about, that they've been doing for years and years and years, that is impeding the progress of their deals. It's impeding their career, and you need to create a safe environment, a safe situation for that coaching to occur by affirming that relationship.
Yeah, and I would also call out the positive. I still think what I see a lot happening in my work world is that people don't celebrate the good, right? They don't talk about what the rep's doing well, because it is expected. We probably all make a lot of money, and we all are expecting high results, and we're type A people. But there's some people that need a pat on the back, and they need to be confirmed. Their goodness needs to be confirmed. And that's a retention thing, too, that would help new managers think through. People like to be told what they're doing well, and you need to provide that feedback. You need to catch your people doing things well. Some 15 years ago when I got my first manager job, I stumbled across a book called The 1 Minute Manager. I'll throw out a little plug for that, because the whole concept, the majority of that book talks about watching your people and focusing on when they do something right and calling it out quickly, because it makes it a whole lot easier to have the open and candid conversation when things aren't going right. Think of the flip side of that. If you're only beating your team up all the time, they're probably not going to love working for you.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That was a great book. Okay, third, understand expected behavior. Managers understand what to look for in a meeting. This comes down to self-awareness, emotional intelligence. You gotta, if you're a manager that lacks that, man, it's worth taking a course on this online. Probably find something on Udemy. If you can't find something on Udemy, take Emotional Intelligence 2.0 or read Emotional Intelligence 2.0. That's a great book. You need to start being aware of the things that you say and the things that you do, because that will impact the people's behavior that you're meeting with, and you can also start to recognize their behavior and understand where they may be feeling a bit insecure as well.
We called it out in a few episodes previous, but I'm assuming not everyone's listened to all those. So I'll say when I got promoted at Microsoft, my manager called me and said, congrats, and we did all that hoopla. And he said, now, the one piece of advice I'll give you is that yesterday, no one knew what you were wearing. No one knew if you were in the office. No one knew anything really about you. But since this email's gone out and they know you're the leader of the team now, they will know whether or not you're chewing gum tomorrow. So be aware of every little detail and every little smile and flat lips that you have. People are going to recognize whether you're happy or sad. They're going to recognize everything. And so you have to truly be self-aware, and you have to play the part. You are that manager now, and you got to step up your game in every aspect and know everyone sees every little detail.
Yeah, I remember you sharing that feedback, probably 7-8 years ago. Number 4 is specify behavior change. Managers should have an objective standard for judging behavior. I think that's a pretty obvious one.
No doubt.
Yeah. The 5th and final one is embed the new behavior. Managers should give their reps the tools to implement coaching suggestions. Tools like action plans and the like are useful here. Again, having a sales process, the manager being familiar with that sales process, understanding when it's just corporate jargon is probably the wrong word for it, but let's say that there's the way things get done, the real way things get done, and the way corporate wants to see it get done. A good manager has experience and knows how deals really work, how deals really come together, so that they're giving action plans, feedback, pushing back internally when they need to push back internally against, maybe operational leadership or the like, to help give good advice and implement those coaching suggestions on their deals.
And the tools don't have to be super sophisticated. I'm a tools guy and get myself caught in the trap of creating a tool and spending too much time creating those tools. It could be as simple as a follow-up email after one-on-ones or after a meeting where you're observing your team. Take the time and be prescriptive and coach them and give them a reason to follow up with you. If you're giving them some guidance on how to write a better executive backgrounder when an exec's coming to town, at least shoot them the outline of what minimum expectations are going to be for that, so that they have something to go on. Remember, they may have never seen one, and you may have seen 20 different versions. So shoot them a previous version. Give them that tool. Don't just coach and walk away. Help.
I love it. So with that one, we're going to wrap this up. I think one of the biggest points out of this, and this was both enlightening and scary in the same way, is that 20 to 30% of reps won't make the successful transition to the challenger model for a number of reasons. It's not all aptitude related. Some of it's just who moved my cheese kind of stuff. If you have not read that book, that's another great one. We'll include that in the show notes. But it's not a difficult methodology to transition to. It could be a little bit scary because it's going to force you to learn more, to change some behavior in terms of how you engage with prospective customers, and they make you think that, man, if I say these things or if I do these things, I could get knocked out of a deal early. But it's well worth the investments because it statistically shows reps that are able to move to this methodology are more successful. Don't we all want that?
No doubt, for sure. And that means that 20 to 30% of the managers trying to implement this challenger manager style probably won't make it either. Find yourself a coach, find yourself a mentor. Don't stop learning. Just because you got that next big job doesn't mean that you're going to be great at it. So keep learning, keep listening to this series. Hopefully we'll continue to provide you great content. If you don't like our content, send us an email, let us know, we'll do more. We don't want you to be average. We think average sucks. Average is the enemy. Thanks for listening to the Tech Sales Show.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Sales Show with Bobby and Brian. Subscribe to their email list by going to bobbyandbrian.com and follow them on Twitter @BobbyBrianSales.